Somewhere right now, in a room you'll never be invited into, a decision is being made about you. Someone is deciding what you're worth, whether you're worth keeping, whether you're worth fighting for. And you're not there to defend yourself. That's the truth almost nobody wants to say out loud. Your future is being negotiated in conversations where you have no vote. The only thing that speaks for you in that room is the value you've already built. Not the value you meant to build. Not the value you're planning to build someday. But the value that's already sitting there, undeniable, whether you show up or not. Most people never think about this until it's too late. They assume that showing up counts, that putting in the years counts, that being a good person, a hard worker, a loyal employee, that this is enough to make them safe. And then one day they find out it wasn't. They find out that hard work and being valuable are not the same thing. That showing up and being irreplaceable are not the same thing. And it stings, because somewhere deep down they believed they'd earned better. Here's what I want to talk to you about today. And I want to be honest with you from the start. This isn't a video about job security. Job security is a small ambition. And if you're still watching after that first sentence, I don't think you came here for small ambitions. I think you came here because some part of you already suspects there's a bigger game being played, and you want to know the rules. The bigger game is this: becoming the kind of person the world reorganizes itself around. Becoming someone whose absence would actually be felt. Not politely missed, but genuinely felt, like a hole nobody quite knows how to fill. That's a completely different pursuit than the one most people are chasing. And once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. Most people are playing a game of appearing valuable. They want to look busy. They want the title, the credit, the recognition. And underneath that, quietly, a lot of them are nursing a resentment, a belief that they deserve more than they're getting. Maybe you felt that too. I'm not here to tell you that feeling is wrong. I'm here to tell you it's useless. Resentment has never once raised anybody's worth. Not a single dollar. Not a single ounce of respect. You can be as bitter as you like about being underpaid, overlooked, or underestimated, and the marketplace will not respond to your feelings about your value. It will only ever respond to your value. And strangely enough, that's the best news I can give you. Because if the world paid people based on how deserving they felt, you'd have zero control over your own life. But it doesn't work that way. It pays for what you actually bring. And what you bring is something you can build, starting today, with your own two hands. If any of what I just said landed somewhere in your chest, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're at right now. Are you the one doing the extra, or are you starting to wonder if you've been coasting? I read every single one, and I want to know who's in this room with me tonight. Because what I'm about to walk you through next isn't motivation for motivation's sake. It's the actual mechanics. The 5 specific things that separate the people who get quietly let go from the people nobody can afford to lose. And once you hear component number 3, you're going to recognize exactly where you've been leaving value on the table without even knowing it. Let's talk about where this whole misunderstanding started. Because most people didn't wake up one day and decide to undervalue themselves. They were handed a promise a long time ago, and they built their whole approach to work around it. The promise sounded something like this: keep your head down, do your job, put in your years, and you'll be taken care of. A lot of good, well-meaning people organized their entire careers around that promise. They became reliable. They became loyal. They showed up on time, did what was asked, and went home. And those aren't bad qualities. In fact, they're rare enough on their own. But here's the quiet mistake buried inside that promise. It confuses presence with production. It confuses loyalty with contribution. It teaches people that being there is the same thing as being needed. So they spent years perfecting the art of being adequate. And then they wondered, with real hurt in their voice, why they were treated as exactly that: adequate. Nobody ever sat them down and explained the actual rule. You get paid for the value you create, not for the hours you occupy. The clock does not measure your worth. Results measure your worth. And once you understand that distinction, you can never go back to thinking about your career the old way again. Let me show you what this looks like when you actually watch it play out, because I think you'll recognize it immediately. Picture 2 people, hired around the same time, doing roughly the same job. The first one does exactly what's asked of them. Not less, but never more. They complete their tasks. They meet their obligations. They fulfill the job description word for word. The second person does something different. They do what's asked, and then they ask a question the first person never thinks to ask. What else is actually needed here? They notice the problem nobody assigned to them. They fix the thing that technically wasn't their job. They make the person above them look better, and the person below them work smarter. Here's the part that catches people off guard. On any single day, you could not tell these two people apart. Same building, same hours, same paycheck. But give it 5 years, give it 10. A gap opens up between them that becomes almost impossible to close. One of them has quietly become essential. The other has quietly become optional. And they started in the exact same place. The difference wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even ambition. Not really. The difference was that one of them treated their job description as a ceiling, and the other treated it as a floor. One asked, "What's the least I can do and still be fine?" The other asked, "What's the most I can actually contribute here?" And the marketplace, which is always watching, always quietly keeping score, even when it looks like nobody's paying attention, sorted them accordingly. Here's something I want you to sit with, because it's going to reframe everything else in this video. The person who becomes irreplaceable never gets there by demanding it. They don't get there by negotiating harder, complaining louder, or waiting for someone upstairs to finally notice them. They get there by becoming so genuinely valuable that the recognition becomes unavoidable. Real value has a strange kind of gravity. You can ignore it for a while. You can even underpay it for a season. But eventually it pulls opportunity toward it, whether anyone planned for that or not. And that's frustrating for a lot of people to hear, because most of us want it in the opposite order. We want to be paid more first, and then we'll contribute more. We want the title first, and then we'll act like we've earned it. But it has never once worked in that order, and it never will. Value always comes first. The reward follows it the way a shadow follows a man walking into the light. So here's the honest question I need you to sit with for a second, because everything that follows depends on how you answer it. Are you trying to get paid for who you already are? Or are you actually working day by day to become someone worth paying more? Those are two completely different projects. And only one of them has ever, in the history of anyone's career, actually succeeded. Now, I want to get specific, because I don't want to leave any of this sitting in the abstract. Value isn't a personality trait. It isn't something you're born with. And it isn't a mystery reserved for a lucky few. It's built out of very specific, very learnable components. And I want to walk you through the first two right now. The first component of value is the ability to solve problems other people can't or won't solve. This is the foundation underneath everything else, because at its core, the marketplace pays for exactly one thing: problem solved. That's the whole transaction, stripped down to its simplest form. The bigger the problem you can solve, and the fewer people capable of solving it, the more you are worth. Here's where most people get stuck without realizing it. They spend their whole career solving small, common problems. The same small problems that everyone else can solve just as easily. And because the problem is common, the pay for solving it stays common too. But the person who becomes irreplaceable has deliberately built the capacity to handle bigger, harder problems. The kind that make other people nervous just looking at them. And here's the twist that changes how you should think about difficulty from now on. Hard problems are hard on purpose. That difficulty is exactly what keeps most people away from them, which is exactly why solving them is worth so much. If you want your value to rise, stop running from the difficult, uncomfortable problems in your work. Walk straight toward them. Become the person who steps forward right when everyone else quietly steps back. Because the person who solves what others avoid becomes the person others cannot do without. The second component is reliability. And I want you to understand just how rare real reliability actually is, because most people think they already have it. Most people are reliable when it's convenient. They deliver when conditions are good, when they're in the mood, when nothing gets in the way. But reliability under easy conditions isn't really reliability at all. It's just cooperation with good circumstances. Real reliability shows up on the hard days, not just the easy ones. It's when the people around know, without a flicker of doubt, that if you said it would get done, it is done. No follow-up required, no reminder needed, no checking in just to be sure. That kind of reliability is so uncommon that it becomes its own form of currency. Think about what it actually gives the people who depend on you. It removes their worry. It removes the mental tax of having to manage you. And that peace of mind is worth far more to people than most of us realize. Worth enough that they will fight hard to keep whoever gives it to them. If any part of this is landing for you, if you're starting to see exactly where you've been reliable only when it was easy, I want you to like this video right now and send it to someone who needs to hear it too. A coworker, a friend, someone building the same kind of career you are. Because what I'm about to walk you through next is the piece that quietly separates the people who get noticed from the people who get promoted. And I don't want you to be the only one who sees it. Here's an unexpected angle worth sitting with for a moment. Most people assume that being liked is what makes them valuable. It isn't. Being liked can get you invited to lunch. Being valuable is what gets you invited to stay. You can be well-liked and completely replaceable at the same time. Plenty of people are. What actually protects your seat at the table is the quiet, unglamorous accumulation of solved problems and kept promises, stacked up over months and years until removing you would genuinely cost something real. That's the shift most people never make. They're optimizing for being liked when they should be optimizing for being needed. Those two things can overlap, but they are not the same thing. And confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in a career. Now we get to the part of this that most people never fully figure out, because it isn't about effort at all. It's about where you aim that effort. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere, in every workplace, every team, every industry. The third component of value is taking responsibility beyond what you were actually assigned. This one separates the ordinary from the extraordinary faster than almost anything else I've ever seen. Most people draw a very clear, very defended line around their responsibilities. This is my job. That is not my job. And they'll defend that line with real energy, sometimes more energy than they spend actually doing the work inside it. But the person who becomes irreplaceable doesn't defend that line. They quietly dissolve it. When something needs doing, and it technically falls outside their job description, they do it anyway. They pick up what others put down. They own outcomes, not just tasks. They start thinking like the person in charge, long before they're ever given that title. And that shift changes how everyone around them sees them, almost overnight. Because taking on responsibility beyond your assignment sends a signal that can't be faked. It says you can be trusted with more. And trust with more is exactly how you end up getting more. Nobody hands serious responsibility to the person guarding their small corner of the map. They hand it to the person who has already shown, again and again, that they'll take care of the whole territory without being asked. Here's something I need you to really sit with, because it's about to reframe everything you thought you understood about being valuable. Most people believe that value is mainly about what they personally produce, but your individual output has a ceiling. There's only so much one person can do in a day, a week, a year. The fourth component of value has no ceiling at all, and it's this: your ability to make the people around you better. The person who lifts everyone around them, who strengthens the team, who develops the people below them, who supports the people beside them, becomes worth far more than their own output alone, because they multiply the output of everyone they touch. A multiplier is always worth more than an adder. Always. If you want to become someone they genuinely cannot afford to lose, become the person whose presence raises the level of the entire room. Become the reason other people get better. Because when that person eventually leaves and everyone around them visibly gets worse, that's a loss no one is willing to accept quietly. If this is opening something up for you, if you're starting to picture exactly what it would look like to be that person on your team, write it in the comments below. Tell me one thing you could take ownership of this week that technically isn't your job. I want to see it, and I promise you, putting it in writing changes whether you actually do it. Here's the part most people miss entirely, though, and it's the twist that reframes this whole conversation. None of this works if it's done purely for your own advancement. There's a version of becoming valuable that's really just self-interest, wearing a good costume, studying the mechanics of value purely to climb, without ever genuinely serving the people around you. That version might get someone a little further for a little while, but it doesn't make them irreplaceable. It makes them tolerated, because everyone can sense, eventually, that their loyalty only ever pointed in one direction, toward themselves. And the moment a better opportunity shows up, everyone already knows they'll take it. Value that genuinely serves other people creates something entirely different. It creates devotion. It creates the desire in the people around you to protect you, to keep you, to make sure you never have a reason to walk away. The person who becomes truly irreplaceable isn't just skilled, they're trusted. And that combination, real capability paired with real care for other people, might be the single rarest and most valuable thing a person can offer. Let's talk about the fifth and final component, because without it, everything else eventually erodes. The fifth component of value is the willingness to keep growing when nothing is forcing you to. Most people stop growing the moment they reach a comfortable level of competence. They learn just enough to do the job well, and then they coast. And coasting, quiet as it feels, is the beginning of becoming replaceable. Because a person who has stopped growing is a person whose value has effectively been frozen in place. And a frozen value, in a world that keeps moving, isn't actually staying still. It's slowly falling behind everything around it. But the person who becomes irreplaceable never fully stops. They keep adding skills. They keep deepening their understanding. They're a little more capable this year than they were last year, quietly, without announcing it. And because of that, their value keeps climbing while the people around them stay flat. 5 years of steady, deliberate growth against 5 years of comfortable coasting produces two completely different people, even if they started out identical. So there are your 5 components, all together. Solving hard problems, being reliable under every condition, not just the easy ones. Taking on responsibility beyond your assignment, making the people around you better, and never fully stopping your own growth. Master those 5, and you will not have to ask anyone to see your value. It will announce itself. Now let me address the one thing that quietly stops most people from ever doing this, because it's a real obstacle, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. Most people won't invest in becoming more valuable because they don't want to give more than they're currently getting back. The logic sounds fair on the surface. Why should I do more when I'm not being paid more? But that exact logic is what keeps a person stuck in the same place for years, sometimes for an entire career. Here's the sequence, and you cannot reverse the order no matter how badly you want to. You become more valuable, and then you get paid more, not the other way around. If you insist on waiting to be paid more before you become more valuable, you will wait far longer than you think, possibly your entire working life. Standing there, arms crossed, asking to be recognized for value you haven't actually created yet. The person who becomes irreplaceable understands this at a level most people never reach. They're willing to give more than they're getting for a while, because they know that's the only way to eventually get more back. They plant before they harvest. They invest before they see the return. And this requires something like faith, not blind faith, but faith grounded in how the world has actually always worked. Value, once genuinely created, does not stay hidden forever. I want to give you one thing you can actually use starting tonight, something you can carry into tomorrow morning before you even open your email. Ask yourself this single question every single day. How can I create a little more value today than I did yesterday? That's the whole discipline. Value isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in the quiet, ordinary repetition of small commitments. One more problem solved. One more person helped. One more skill sharpened, just slightly, than it was the day before. Most people never ask that question. They ask a much smaller one instead. How do I get through today? And that smaller question, asked enough times, produces a smaller life. The questions you ask yourself, day after day, direct your attention. Your attention determines your action. And your action, repeated for years, determines exactly who you become. But here's what I need you to hold on to before we get to the end of this, because there's a real trap waiting on the other side of success. And almost nobody warns people about it in Time Dot. The trap is complacency, and it arrives quietly, right after you've finally started to see results. You get comfortable. The recognition starts flowing in. and a voice inside you starts whispering that you've made it, that you can finally ease off the gas. That voice, gentle as it sounds, is the beginning of decline. Because value isn't a monument you build once and then stand back and admire for the rest of your life. Value is a living thing. It has to be maintained, renewed, and continually rebuilt. The world doesn't hold still while you rest. And the moment you stop rising, you start falling. Not in absolute terms, but relative to everything still moving around you. The person who stays irreplaceable is the one who treats every level of success as a new starting line, never as a finish line. There is no summit to rest on here. There's only the climb and the daily choice to keep climbing. I want to close with something that changes how you carry fear. Because most people live with a low, constant hum of worry about their position. Worried about being let go, passed over, quietly replaced by someone younger or cheaper or more convenient. That fear shapes behavior in the worst possible way. It makes people play small. It makes them protect the little they already have instead of building something bigger. But when you genuinely become irreplaceable, that fear doesn't need managing anymore. It simply dissolves. Not because your circumstances suddenly become perfect, but because you've built something that circumstances can no longer easily take from you. Your security stops depending on anyone's mercy and starts depending entirely on your own contribution, which is the one thing that has always been fully within your control. That's a kind of freedom most people never get to experience. The freedom of being wanted instead of merely tolerated. And I want you to understand something important here, from someone who's watched this play out again and again. This isn't only about your career. It's about your whole life. In your friendships, it means becoming the friend people genuinely treasure. The one who shows up, who can be counted on, who adds something real to every life they touch. In your family, it means becoming the steadiness that holds everything else together. Everywhere you go, the same question applies. What can I actually contribute here? Ask that enough times, in enough rooms, over enough years, and you become the kind of person others quietly build their lives around. Here's the last thing I want to leave you with tonight, because I think it matters more than anything else I've said. When you start walking this path, you'll give a great deal and receive very little back at first. You'll be planting seeds that haven't sprouted yet, pouring effort into what feels, some days, like an empty room. A lot of people quit right there, right before the shift happens, and they walk away convinced this whole approach doesn't actually work. But it does work. It just works on a longer timeline than most people's patience can survive. If you keep creating real value, year after year, the ratio eventually reverses. The value compounds. The reputation starts to precede you into rooms you haven't even entered yet. And one day, sooner than you'd expect, though it never feels that way while you're in it, the world begins treating you exactly the way you've quietly been preparing it to treat you all along. So don't measure your worth by what you're receiving this month. Measure it by what you're actually building. The account is filling, even while the balance looks low. And the truth is, in some conversation you'll never sit in on, someone is eventually going to decide how much you're worth, how hard to fight to keep you, how much of the future to hand to you. None of your excuses will be in that room. None of your good intentions will be sitting at that table. The only thing in that room will be the value you have actually built. The good news, the genuinely freeing news, is that this part is entirely up to you. Nobody can stop you from becoming more capable. Nobody can prevent you from taking on the harder problem, from becoming more reliable, from carrying more responsibility, from lifting the people around you, from choosing to keep growing long after you technically have to. Those are choices available to you starting tomorrow morning. If tonight's video gave you something worth carrying with you, I'd genuinely love it if you'd subscribe to Master Your Life and keep the notifications on. This is exactly the kind of thinking we build on, week after week, together. Because becoming worth keeping isn't a single decision. It's a direction. And the only real question left is whether you start walking it today or keep waiting for a recognition that never arrives for someone who hasn't yet built the reason for it.